Sam Hitman grew up in a farming town in New Jersey. He played D1 tennis at Rutgers, moved to Colorado in 1993, and has been running racket sports facilities ever since. Today, he operates 3 facilities across the state, runs the Tennis and Pickleball for Kids Scholarship Program, and just celebrated Gates Tennis Center's 50th anniversary as the nation's largest sanctioned tennis tournament host. But before I knew any of that, I knew Sam as my teammate. We played on a championship basketball team together at our local community center. And that's where the friendship started. And it's only grown since. I'm Evan Dechtman. This is CourtSide. Sam, welcome.
That's a great introduction, man.
You like that?
That's
Excellent.
great.
Well, welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to have you here. So you grew up in Hamilton, New Jersey, a farming town outside of Philly. How does a
That's
kid
right.
there end up playing D1 tennis at Rutgers?
Wait a second. Can I ask you a question before you ask me a question?
Well, sure.
I heard your last guest had 90,000 followers on social media. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay, well, that guest has 89,999 more followers than me.
Well, we're not counting the likes. We're rolling into the knowledge here.
I don't know how I qualified to be a guest, but okay, back to your question. Okay.
Well, so you were a D1 player at Rutgers. How did a kid from outside Philly end up playing D1 tennis at Rutgers?
Okay. I think there's going to be a theme throughout this interview. I'm going to establish this to anybody listening. Your introduction made me sound way too good, and I think the theme is going to be me beating down expectations here on all fronts. I barely played at Rutgers. I warmed the bench for the I warmed the bench for the real impact players. I barely squeezed onto the team. I mean, there were guys on that team that were amazing athletes. In fact, I'm going to shout out somebody from that team, Steve DeRose. If you're listening out there in New Jersey, he went on to become like number 2 in the world of platform tennis. Because I know this show is about the business of all racket sports, not just tennis, and that goes into padel and pickleball, and platform tennis is like its own little subculture of racket sports. I never got into that sport, but Steve parlayed his Division I amazing soft hands into I don't know what he does but he's all over YouTube as an amazing platform player. So.
Well, listen, you may have been warming the bench, but you were on the bench, so that counts in my book.
I was on the bench.
So you started as a teaching pro at Gates in 93, if I'm correct.
That's right.
What was Gates like back then compared to now?
And I'm even going to add a little color to that story. I had only been in Denver for 3 days, and I think we have a common friend, somebody who helped get me that job, a neighbor of yours or a neighborhood gal, Nancy Alterman Harrison. I was in town maybe she's listening to the podcast. I was in town for 3 days. I asked around, hey, where's the hot place to play? I rode my bicycle over to Gates Tennis Center, and I just timed it right, which, in life, sometimes timing is everything. I was right out of college and just got a teaching job as a long-haired 23-year-old. And next thing you know, I was lucky enough, they took a chance on me to hire me as a teaching pro at Gates Tennis Center, 1993. Yeah.
So to my listeners out there, a lot of you may run facilities or want to. This next section is where we get into how Gates actually works as a business. So Gates has an unusual structure for those of you who don't know. The city owns the land, the park people provide oversight, and Sam's company runs the day-to-day as a concessionaire. Walk me through how that works. Who decides what?
That's exactly right. It's I guess like a triangle, and it's a pretty cool system. Other cities have even studied that, how they could maybe emulate that. I was hired as a consultant in a couple different gigs over the years to help other municipalities look at that. I believe that this unique structure, like a public-private collaboration, may go all the way back to 1975 of how Mr. Gates, Charles Gates, and the Gates Family Foundation, how they visualized it happening, what his visualization. I can't speak for Mr. Gates, obviously, who's no longer with us, but his vision at that time may have been to avoid some city politics or some city different things that may go along with it, and he wanted his donation and his philanthropy to be a certain way in 1975, and the model exists and has been running strong for 50 years, and it seems to be working. Gates is a thriving place that I can attest for, because on a daily basis, it's a really amazing place. It's packed on a daily basis.
So that brings me to my next question, and that is courts. If I may be off here, but courts are $8 an hour for tennis and 7 for pickleball,
Yeah, yeah.
and lessons start at 60. So my question is, how do you keep prices that low with club level programming and still make the math work?
You're very good at you're good at this, Evan. You're these are good questions.
Thank you.
We like to think of this amazingly great deal of $8 an hour for a court that is, we take care of our courts. We just resurface courts. We wash them. We have good windscreens. I mean, these are well kept courts. These are not, crappy courts. These are nice courts with reservations and the whole thing. But we haven't raised prices in 18 years on the like the tennis playing side, since the building was built. And so we internally, we like to joke around, like, like we're the Trader Joe's, we're like the Trader Joe's banana, or we're the Costco hot dog, or, like, how do
I love it.
we actually take pride in the fact that we haven't raised it. And the simple answer is that all of the other parts of Gates kind of chip in to make it so that the whole model works, including pickleball. Like pickleball, the addition of pickleball about 5 years ago. I don't want to say that pickleball subsidizes the tennis, but it's pretty close to that, because the pickleball is an intensification of the usage of the ground. And when you're able to get more people in there into that, in your fence line, you're able to change the economic model. And we've been able to avoid raising, I mean, because labor costs have gone up, insurance has quadrupled, electricity, we turn the lights on, and the $8 covers the whole court. So 4 people are splitting that up, and it doesn't matter if it's at night or daytime. And so as insurance and electricity and labor costs over 18 years have gone up, we have not raised that, and we're proud of that. Thank you for the great question. And just the whole model works together, and
Well,
we pay,
we'll be getting in.
yeah,
Sorry.
we pay our employees well, or we think we do, and we don't have a lot of turnover, and so, but the whole model comes together and works together. So that's kind of the answer. Yeah,
That's great. That's great. Well,
yeah,
we're going to get into pickleball in just a minute, but
okay.
you now operate 3 facilities: Gates, Lakewood Park, and Pueblo. What made you expand beyond Gates, and what's different about running an indoor facility in Pueblo, for example, versus a 20-court outdoor center in Denver?
Just to kind of fact check you a little bit. Lakewood recently has changed their model, and we're no longer, our company is no longer involved with Lakewood. We
Oh,
were
okay.
there. We were there. Maybe that's still on my bio somewhere. I have to update it. I'm not sure where you pulled that from, but
I did.
we had, that's maybe my fault, but we had a great run there. The city of Lakewood, wonderful people, and we had a great run there. We helped design the pickleball facility there, and we love working with the city there, but they've gone a couple different directions there for different reasons from within the city and pressures that they had from city council. And I'd say we were there for maybe a good 12 or 13-year run, but our company's no longer involved with Lakewood, but we are there with Pueblo. And Pueblo, as you alluded to, that's a different model, that's a private club. So in my long career, I've had private clubs and public clubs, and indoor clubs and outdoor clubs and clay courts, and a little bit of everything. But Gates is a special place, obviously, with the public nature. But back to your original question, was kind of, what was your question? Sorry.
Just, what made you expand beyond Gates? Because you started out with Gates, and then, what's the difference between, you've got this gorgeous, huge facility, 20 courts,
Yeah.
and then, down in Pueblo. And I mean, even when you were running Lakewood, that's a much smaller operation. So,
Yeah.
just asking, what's different about running each of those, or is it the same theme that runs throughout?
I mean, it's a little bit of everything. I mean, every tennis center has commonalities where, all tennis players cross over. We all want to have you know, we all want good competition. We all want fun. We all want to work out. There's certain commonalities that all tennis players throughout the world probably want. We want social elements. Some people want, workouts. All people want to get better. They want level control. But certainly there's big differences between private and public and indoor and outdoor. And knowing those nuances are huge depending on which club you're running and what the social economics are of what town you're in. And while we're on it, just because you're asking about the history, quick little shout out to Eric Rose. If he's listening, I'll make sure to forward these podcasts to him. That's my original business partner. And Eric and I ran Gates together starting in 2006. And he was, we were partners in crime for many, many years. And so, but your original question was, how did we get into these other clubs? Well, when you're running a management company, remember, you don't own anything because like you mentioned earlier, the city owns the land. And so one opportunity that came up for us was, to actually own our own building and own our own land in the state of New Mexico. And when that opportunity came up, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, Eric and I restructured our business model. So Eric went down to New Mexico and ran that club in New Mexico and had a great run in New Mexico, so on and so forth. And that was a private club down in New Mexico, and that was part of our portfolio. So shout out to Eric, who's the original gangster of Gates, 2006.
Love that. Well,
Yeah.
sure, I do remember Eric, of course.
Yeah.
So for my listeners out there, if you run a tennis facility, the next question is probably the one that you've been waiting for. Gates now has 15 dedicated pickleball courts alongside 20 tennis courts. My numbers might be a little wrong there, but fairly close. When pickleball started gaining traction, were you excited or worried?
Oh my God. Both. I mean, it was, it's a whole new world. And plus you had the pandemic that you had to mix in the fears of the pandemic going on, because this was all in 2021 when it was all going down. And but the biggest driving force for us that year was just remembering who you are. And remember, every club, you have to put on your hat of that club. If you're a private club, who are you serving? If you're in Pueblo, who are you serving? But at Gates, the hat that I wear at Gates, this is very important, is we are representing the city of Denver and the people of Denver. And that's the lens that we take. We can't be tennis purists. We have to take on, how do we best serve the entire community? And at that time, if you wear the broadest lens, I would say, and this is what I discuss with my governing body, shout out to the park people and the best governing body out there. We have great philosophical brainstorms on all these types of big strategic decisions. So at this time in 2021, we're thinking about, do we go pickleball or not pickleball? And at this time, remember, Denver is also in the middle of a marijuana cannabis boom. So Denver has doubled in size. We're like, I don't know, 3 million people in the metro area. Every open space, green space is important to maximize. Pickleball is a subcategory. The pandemic is a subcategory. So if you're a green space and you can serve double the population, because ultimately as a recreational facility, you want to give physical and mental recreational usage to people of Denver or travelers through Denver. And we're able to now double that, with, two different sports. And of course, at that expense, we have to sacrifice a few tennis courts. That's the root of your question, is how do you balance those two? But at that time, those are the decisions that we made, to go from 20 tennis courts. We at our peak, we had 20 tennis courts, and now we have 16 tennis courts. So ultimately we gave up 4 tennis courts, but in doing so, we have 16 pickleball courts. So it seemed like a good trade-off to double the size of who you serve. And you have to, you have some shrinkage in the tennis, but you double everything else. Now, the flip side of that is you also double the trash that you make and the noise that you make and the parking problems that you have, and you've intensified everything. But so there's counter arguments to everything, but overall it's added to the vibrancy of Gates. And again, it goes back to the Trader Joe's banana, where it added to the economic model, and overall it's been a great vibrancy thing for Gates. And the end all summary of my spiel is that the decision was made that that's what's best for Gates and the people of Denver, is to try to
So,
diversify.
so speaking of noise, right, and all that the stuff that comes along with it, you got ahead of the noise problem before it became a legal issue, right? You measured the decibels, you found that maybe they're over the ordinance, and tested every quiet option that you could find. Tell me about that process.
I mean, it's still a work in progress. You know, we invested in some sound panels. We have 6 courts that are soft paddle courts, and these little changes, do make a difference. I think in pickleball, it would be great if pickleball could invent a quieter ball, or invent, but we'll see how pickleball can evolve. It's very difficult for neighbors, as, sound does travel. If you've ever lived in a city, you know how sound travels upwards, and you have to be very careful with the sound that you emit, and it's important to be a good neighbor. So we're very conscious of that as we move forward. And as we make strategic plans for Gates moving forward, that's a hot topic with our committee, is making sure that we take all things in consideration moving forward. We have
You
to be
said,
we have to be
yeah.
conscious of
Well,
that. Yeah.
and I think you said somewhere where you want to make people two paddle players, right? One quiet paddle, maybe for urban
Yeah.
settings, and one regular for everywhere else. Do you think the industry goes
Yeah.
that direction?
I've you must listen when I forget when I told you that. That was a long time. I forget when I told you that, but that's you remembered. Thank you for remembering that. I don't know that people will ever actually, that would be like a pipe dream if people, actually had a regular paddle and a soft paddle. I don't know that, now that I really know pickleball players like in and out, I don't know. People are so married to their paddle that they have their favorite paddle. I don't know that they will ever become that, but people can dream, but it's true that, like, depending where you're at and where you pick up a match, if you're in an HOA or in a neighborhood, or sometimes just private courts if they're in a fancy neighborhood, it's nice to have a quiet paddle in your bag, just to be able to whip it so that you can play anywhere. But I don't know. I mean, it's sometimes it's not realistic, because the consumer just gets so attached to their favorite tennis racket or favorite paddle. It's just not This is not realistic. But that would be a dream if everyone was like a two paddle player, I must have told
So
you that a while back. Yeah.
so in 2017, you launched the School of Tennis Management. Is that still going?
It's not really. I mean, we for a couple years. The short answer is the pandemic kind of killed a lot of things. Because that's like a business in itself. For any of the listeners
Why?
out there,
Yeah, that
it was an interesting idea, because we were looking for ways to not just attract a regular old tennis pro to come to Gates, but tennis pros that had, like, wanted to be in the industry long term, like, so tennis pros that would one day want to run like a future manager, And so we started our own school, and we became certified as a state certified school. But during the pandemic, it changed a lot of things. You had to, like, you had to kind of pick which lane you were in, and that school was just one too many things to be juggling in the air. So we had to simplify. And once we got into pickleball, that was a whole different thing. So we had to restructure a few things when the pandemic came. So that school is no longer a certified school. But the reason the school came about is because prior to 2017, it's kind of like we're always running a school, whether we have a school or don't have a school, because when these tennis pros come to us, we're always teaching them about coordinating programs, and we're teaching them about, because we're grooming them to be managers anyway. So the thought process was like, why don't we become a real, and so for a couple of years in there, we tried it, but we don't have that school anymore officially. So we're back to the unofficial. If you're a tennis pro working at Gates, you get the unofficial school of management.
I love it. Well, with that being said, if a college grad, or really anyone, came to you and said, "I want to run a tennis facility," what would you tell them the job actually looks like day to day?
Oh my gosh. You know, I heard Andy Zodin's answer to that on one of your podcasts, and it's true. You never get bored, because you're in the people business, and you just never know what every day is going to be different. You're in, that's the business we're in, but you don't get bored in the people business, because people are unique beings, and they always come up with a new angle and a new idea. And new idea. That's the thing. New ideas are coming at you all the time. And we listen to our customers, we listen to our employees, and new ideas come from within. So, yeah. But Gates has about 80 different employees between maintenance and front desk and a huge tennis pro staff. And so, when you're dealing with a big staff, you've got anything from HR to on-court facilities management, capital projects, and political stuff, noise ordinance stuff. It could be anything. And my job is just to kind of float around and help people solve problems and just try to become the best that they can be.
Love it. I love it. So, to my
Yeah.
audience, for anybody that's thinking about getting into the facility side of racket sports, this last stretch is for you. So, Sam, you've been in this industry for over 30 years. Tennis boom and bust cycles, now pickleball and padel. Where do you see the facility business going in the next 5 years?
I wish I had that crystal ball. I mean, tennis seems to be like the classic sport, the beautiful classic sport that's not going anywhere. It's, an Olympic sport. It's a high school sport. It's a college sport. I mean, it's strong as ever. Our tennis ladder is large and in charge. And, tennis is solid as can be. So I think tennis is like great. Pickleball is also great, but there seems to be so many facilities that it's almost feels saturated, where I just don't know if it can take any. I don't know if the growth of, the growth of pickleball can keep up with the number of facilities. So hopefully between public facilities, private courts, it feels like 5 years ago it was different, but now just 5 years later, I feel like pickleball courts and pickleball facilities has caught up with the growth. So at least right now. And the big question mark is, I guess, padel or paddle, as I'm told that you're supposed to call it, paddle or padel. I guess that's an argument, but a paddle, I'm told. Shout out to Art Turnbull, who is, and actually shout out to Jake at Paddle House. They just opened. If you're interviewing all the different sports, that's a new paddle house downtown off of Welton.
Yep.
They did a soft opening with the Gates staff so we could all go out and try it. Wonderful facility out there. But I mean, so as new paddle places open around Denver, I guess we'll see how paddle plays into the marketplace. I guess we'll know. But in a couple of years, there's going to be at least a handful of places around the area. We'll see what happens and how that shakes in.
I'm looking forward to it. I've played myself, and it is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, Sam, if someone called you tomorrow, they just got the keys to run a public tennis facility, brand new to the business, and asked for one piece of advice from the legendary Sam Hitman, what would you tell them?
I'd say get ready to work long hours and listen to your customers.
That is excellent advice. Sam, thank you so much for being on Courtside. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to get out there and play some pickle or tennis with you someday.
Or paddle.
Or paddle.
Let's play some paddle, man. Let's get a new sport going.
I love it.
Okay, man.